From our State House studio in Montgomery, I'm Todd Stacy. Welcome to Capitol Journal. 6 people were killed in northern Watauga County when a tornado ripped through the area Thursday. At least 12 more were taken to the hospital. The storm also produced a tornado that struck downtown Selma, uprooting trees and damaging several homes and businesses. Selma Mayor James Perkins said no fatalities had been reported there, but several people were seriously injured. Governor Kay Ivey, U.S. Senator Katie Britt, and Congresswoman Terry Sewell took an aerial view of the damage in a helicopter Friday. The leaders said that officials are still assessing the extent of the damage and that they will be asking President Joe Biden to declare a state of emergency. The legislature was back in town this week, the new legislature that is, with House and Senate members elected to office in November. Lawmakers met for their organizational session, which includes the election of leadership, adopting rules, and assigning members to committees. In the House, we officially have a new Speaker. Members unanimously elected Nathaniel Ledbetter of Rainsville to wield the gavel for the next 4 years. That was the high point of a busy few days in the lower chamber. Capitol Journal's Randy Scott reports.
Lawmakers returned to the House chamber for the first time this year. They're happy to see one another, but this is not a social call. There's work to do.
To the best of my ability. So help me God. Congratulations, team.
New members are sworn in. Then the election of a new Speaker of the House. Outgoing Speaker Mac McCutcheon did not seek re-election and is turning the gavel over to someone else. Members nominate Representative Nathaniel Ledbetter to the post.
I stand before you today a man that's humbled by the faith you have put in me and the great responsibility you have placed upon my shoulders. I pledge to you here and now to work as hard as I'm able to justify both.
Speaker Ledbetter mentions the goals for the House.
All of us who answer the call of duty and hold the title of state representative serve with one common purpose in mind: to make an already great state even greater. I understand that the Speaker's gavel is not a weapon, it's a tool. To be used to encourage honest debate, find common ground, and represent the constituents that each of us seek to serve. Each time we enter the chamber, we pass by the phrase that is so important. It was carved into the seal of the Alabama House of Representatives, Vox Populi, which means the voice of the people. I intend to let those voices be heard, not through political grandstanding, but through open and fair and constructive debate.
The Speaker now in place, Representative Chris Pringle is elected Speaker Pro Tem.
I remember sitting in that chair in January of 1995, never imagining for a moment that I would become the Pro Tem of the Alabama House of Representatives. So it's been a long time, it's been a long journey, and I can honestly say I've enjoyed every bit of it.
The regular session starts in March, but the House stands ready.
It's time to go to work, right?
For Capitol Journal, I'm Randy Scott.
There were no leadership changes in the Senate. Greg Reed of Jasper was re-elected as President Pro Tem. Just like in the House, that election was unanimous and bipartisan per tradition. That stands in contrast to the highly partisan Speaker election in Washington.
I'm going to communicate as much as I know how. I like talking, and so we're going to communicate, and that's been a hallmark of what we've already been up to. I'm going to focus on issues that are important to Alabama. We've got a lot of issues of significance, but there are some that are most important to the people that we serve. Recognize every member to be heard. We get a much better product coming out of this body when we listen to what everybody has to say. It may take a little more time, but we wind up with a better outcome. And is that not our goal for the people of Alabama?
Senator Bobby Singleton was again elected by the Democratic caucus to serve as minority leader. He had some thoughts of his own about how his caucus would operate in the Republican-dominated chamber.
thank you to my caucus over on the Democratic side for entrusting in me to continue to be the leader as a minority leader. And I want to thank also my leader, Reed, for entrusting and working well together with me in a bipartisan manner. And for this body, thank you once again. I look forward to coming to this mic and giving you pure HELL and making sure that we start our first hour if we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Leader.
Thank you.
Both chambers adopted new rules for legislative procedure over the next 4 years. In the House, changes were made to streamline debate and the bill passing process. If a bill comes to the floor with multiple committee amendments, they can be consolidated into one amendment and voted on, instead of requiring multiple separate votes. The new rules also allow local bills to be contested by those outside the area, so long as 11 members agree to the contest. Also, the Speaker will be empowered to reassign bills to a second committee once they reach the floor. In the Senate, one new rule will allow the Senate committee chairman to hold public hearings on bills without the previously required 48-hour notice. The new rule says 48-hour notice should be given, quote, when possible. Senator Arthur Orr sponsored the resolution containing those rule changes, and he says that oftentimes a committee chairman will have a meeting planned, and the day prior, a member of the public or a group will request a public hearing. He says chairs want to accommodate the request, but don't want to wait the 48 hours required. The legislature will return for its regular session on March 7th. And between now and then, we will see a lot of bills getting pre-filed. One proposal we expect to see from Senator Arthur Orr is a pay raise for school principals. Orr says he wants to raise pay and build a pipeline for professional development for school administrators in Alabama. There are about 1,440 public schools across the state, and principals' salaries vary. But on the lowest end, an elementary school leader starts at about $62,000 per year, according to the Council of Leaders in Alabama Schools. Of course, all teachers and education workers got a pay raise in the last legislative session. That raise applied to some, but not all, administrators. Orr says recruiting and retaining quality principals is a key component to improving education. Also on the education and workforce front, Alabama's community college system is partnering with the Alabama Association of Resource Conservation and Development Councils to offer 30 college, career, and apprenticeship workshops to military members and their families. The council also donated $50,000 to the project.
These workshops will provide our active military, National Guardsmen, reservists, and veterans in Alabama with an opportunity to learn more about the education and workforce development programs, as well as state and federal financial benefits available to them at their local community colleges.
The events that are scheduled in coordination with these councils stand to improve the lives and opportunities of our military community. And these workshops show the investment and support of these great organizations. We want to reciprocate that with our participation, and we will do whatever we can to support.
The Alabama Department of Corrections recently decided to remove inmate death totals, including homicides and suicides, from its monthly statistical reports. The plan going forward is to report those statistics on a quarterly basis in what the department calls a more complete report. But lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are questioning the move, saying legislation may be necessary to compel the monthly reporting. Governor Ivey and Prison Commissioner John Hamm have defended the change, saying it will lead to more accurate reporting. Hamm also reminded the media that many of the deaths that occur in prison are from natural causes.
That is a number of 200 plus, but there is a lot of those numbers that are natural causes because as a prison population of about 21,000 right now, we're having inmates come in that are older. They are not as healthy as they should, so we do have inmates that are dying of natural causes or disease.
Hamm also recognized that the high percentage of inmates incarcerated for violent offenses also contributes to that death toll.
According to the Alabama Sentencing Commission report that actually hasn't gone out yet on their yearly statistics, 80% of the people serving time in the Alabama Department of Corrections are there for a violent offense. So that in itself tells you that we have a population that is, they're prone to violence. So we're trying to mitigate that as much as possible through our rehabilitative efforts and, our rehabilitative housing units, or restrictive housing units. So that is something that we will continue to work on.
This week, Governor Ivey signed an executive order establishing uniform standards for the loss of correctional incentive time, more commonly referred to as good time, which allows inmates to reduce their sentence for good behavior. This has been an issue since last June, when 2 law enforcement officers were shot and 1 was killed by someone released early for good time. Capital Journal's Karen Goldsmith has that story.
Our action today, very simply put, keeps violent offenders off the street, incentivizes inmates who truly want to rehabilitate and better themselves, and it reinforces the concept that bad choices have consequences.
Executive Order 725 puts inmate violations that result in the forfeiture of correctional incentive time or good time into 4 categories: severe, high, medium, and low. After meeting certain criteria, inmates can apply for restoration of the time, but restoring lost time due to severe violations is at the discretion of the Corrections Commissioner and will be used in rare, exceptional circumstances.
All comes down to behavior. I mean, these individuals have been convicted of felonies and they're incarcerated, so, if they're ready to be rehabilitated, then that's part of it. They're going to make good decisions, and we offer all the classes they need on anger management and good decision making. So that's going to be the main thing. What's their record and how they're acting.
Due to the nature of their crimes and or the length of their sentences, not all inmates qualify for correctional incentive time. But for those who do, the plan can remove a significant number of days off their sentences. But state officials want to ensure that inmates are truly earning the time.
For these individuals just to get good time, just because they continue to breathe, that's not right. That's not justice. That's not right to the victims. But these policies, in my opinion, and hopefully you'll see, will give clear guidance and will separate those who are trying to do the right thing and trying to rehabilitate themselves and trying to be good model citizens when they get out of prison from those who are just gaming the system.
For Capital Journal, I'm Karen Goldsmith.
I'll speak with State Senator April Weaver more about this issue when we come back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts.
Russell Cave is located in northeast Alabama in Jackson County. It is a significant archaeological site with deep deposits that are a result of frequent use by Native Americans for thousands of years and offer a glimpse of life ways from the archaic to the historic period. Russell Cave was named a national monument in 1961. Today, the cave is part of the National Park System.
Next, I'm joined by State Senator April Weaver. Senator, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here on Capital Journal with you.
Yeah, well, I wanted to have you on for this week's show because this is topical this week, the discussion of good time policies in our prisons. So let's talk about this. Good time meaning it's the policy that allows inmates to basically get time off of their sentences for good behavior behind bars. Of course, there were a few cases last year where those who had been released from prison committed crimes, including a murder of a police officer in your community. I wanted you to kind of tell us about that.
Yes, so yesterday I pre-filed SB 1, which will be known as the Deputy Brad Johnson Act. It's a very tragic situation that happened in my district that I have been involved with since the beginning, actually June 29th, 2022. And to tell you a little bit about that, I was working here in Montgomery. There was a convicted felon who stole a car in Shelby County, and they had a high-speed chase that wound up in going into Bibb County, where Deputy Chris Poole and Deputy Brad Johnson began to chase the suspect. The suspect wound up wrecking the car essentially in the foot of my driveway, right near my house. And Deputy Chris Poole was first there at the scene of the suspect who wrecked, and he was shot in the head by the suspect, at which time he picked up the radio and said, "I've been shot in the head, call April Weaver." And, you know,
because it was at your house.
It was at my house. He knows that I'm a health care provider. Deputy Johnson and Deputy Poole are both great friends of the Weaver family, and have known them for a very, very long time. Great people, great law enforcement officers. And you know, when he picked up that radio and called for me to help him, my mother was listening to her scanner in our community, and she heard Deputy Poole's request for me to come help him, at which point she started looking for me. I was actually here in Montgomery working, so she started trying to find me. She called my husband, who in the first part of his career was a trauma physician. He spent over 600 flights doing life flights, and also about 27 years in an emergency room setting, so is taking care of a lot of critically ill people and trauma patients. She called him. He was working at home and had not been at home to work for a day since COVID, but happened to be at our house working exactly at the time that all this was taking place. He was on the Zoom call. He looks down, he sees her voicemail dictating to him and that Chris has been shot and that he's asking for me to come help him. So he immediately gets off his Zoom call and goes out to help, thinking he's going to help Chris. And when he gets there, he finds that Deputy Johnson has also been shot. So he, along with others there in our community, provided care to Deputy Johnson there on the scene. He worked with others in our community to provide transport to him to go meet the ambulance, and then rode to UAB with Deputy Johnson. When I got home, there was a manhunt all around our house and all around our farm, and I got to see the incident command center of all those hundreds of law enforcement officers working there. And at that time, we talked about a lot of things, and a lot of things that needed to be fixed in Alabama, where we can do things better and we can do things differently so situations like that don't happen again. And I made a commitment to them that night that I was going to work on this issue. So for the past 6-7 months, I've been working on this issue with a lot of different agencies and a lot of different people related to law enforcement. And we really have figured out a way that we think is a great resolution to statutorily fix a broken law that we currently have in the way that the good time law is written.
And we reported earlier on some actions the governor is taking on this issue from her executive authority. So why is legislation needed?
So I'm really excited that the governor has taken the first step on Monday with her executive order, and I really appreciate her and her staff having such a great interest in this tragic situation. I do feel, and I've discussed this with them, that we need to statutorily reform and that we need to fix the law, because I think it's the law that's broken.
And you know, there are those out there who also say, you know, wait a minute, we need good time policies to encourage good behavior in prison. I mean, our prisons are pretty violent already. So what would you say to those arguments?
So I would say I think there is a place for good time. I think for prisoners who are behaving well in prison, who are trying to go through rehab and reforming themselves, and they're cooperating with corrections officers, I think there is a place that you use good time to work with them in their situations. However, in this situation, the shooter of Deputy Brad Johnson. And I will not say his name because I don't think that he deserves any more recognition. For anybody that's interested, they can Google Deputy Brad Johnson and they can see the whole story. There are a lot of stories out there in the news about this specific situation, but he was a convicted felon who, if he had been serving his full sentence, he would have still been in prison on June 29th, 2022, the day that Deputy Johnson was shot. He had a lot of bad behavior during his time with the Department of Corrections and after that, even in some county jails. He not only was he an escapee from DOC, he had assaulted officers. And in this bill that I pre-filed yesterday, there are some very specific actions that if you do these things while you're in prison, you will not be eligible for good time. And I don't think that we should give good time just because you're there. I think that you should earn it.
Well, yeah, I mean, that sounds like pretty bad behavior, trying to escape and things like that. Well, while we have just a little bit of time, can you walk me through sort of the basics of your bill?
Yes. So the bill that I pre-filed yesterday, again, SB1, pre-filed for the 2023 session, and I'm so excited that it's the first bill filed for the session. It makes some changes specifically to the way the deduction from the sentence is calculated. Currently, if you have someone who's serving 10 years, if they go by the current law, I mean, they could have deductions down to 3 years or a little bit more, so they could only be serving a third of their sentence if all the good time was given to them. This makes some changes in the calculations so that it doesn't give them automatic good time, it makes them earn it. And also it changes the calculation in the way that things are done with the classification of the prisoners. So, not only do you have to earn it, you're going to have to work hard to get good time to get out early under this law that I've pre-filed.
So do you think, so the incentive would still be there and maybe even greater, in a perfect scenario for prisoners not just to, not do wrong, but actually proactively do good?
Right. And that's what we would hope, is that it would be an incentive that if you are on good behavior and you're really trying to do better, then you are eligible for this and we can work you through these programs and these calculations. One other thing that I forgot to mention that this law currently that I have pre-filed does is it also provides a reporting mechanism for the Department of Corrections that is not currently in place. There will be a required report related to good time from DOC that will go to the governor, the attorney general, and to the legislature each year under this law.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're out of time, but we're looking at doing a whole episode just on prisons and the criminal justice system and everything in Alabama. So I want to have you back on and talk more about this issue.
I would love that. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on. We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capitol Journal and link to past episodes on Capitol Journal's Facebook page.
Moundville Archaeological Park contains the remains of one of the largest prehistoric Native American settlements in the United States. Founded around 1120, Moundville was located on the banks of the Black Warrior River, 14 miles south of present-day Tuscaloosa. A thriving ceremonial and political center of Mississippian culture, the site was occupied for more than 3 centuries, but was abandoned by the early 16th century.
Next, I'm joined by State Representative Joe Lovvorn from Auburn, the new chairman of the House Rules Committee. Mr. Chairman, thanks for coming on Capitol Journal.
Thanks for having me, Todd, and always enjoy visiting with you.
Well, congratulations on being named chairman of the Rules Committee. Tell me, how did this come about? How did this appointment as chair come about?
Well, I'm so thankful for the trust the Speaker Ledbetter has put in me and the members have served in this role. I tell you, when I was elected in special session in 2016, I came down here, in a special session you come in basically by yourself. So I just started listening, paying attention, and learning who around me is working to get things done and try to learn from those people. And as new people come in, you get a small office assignment. I was put in a broom closet on the 5th floor, and I was very blessed. Right across the hallway was Nathaniel Ledbetter. And we met and have been good friends ever since. And I've been a good, trusted friend to him, and he's been a good, trusted friend to me. And he asked me if I would take on this role, and was honored to do it, and excited and looking forward to it.
You're right. You were a freshman class of 1 for that special session, right? Well, the Rules Committee is interesting because it's a really influential, powerful committee, but a lot of that's behind the scenes. Can you kind of walk us through what the committee does, the process?
Sure. The main process we have is when legislation is going through the committee process, through the House and through the Senate, it comes to a point where we've got to vote on it on the floor. And the Rules Committee sets that agenda, that calendar, provides a little more scrutiny for the bills, meaning making sure grammatically they're correct, making sure they are dynamic, that the bills are wanting to do the things they want to do, and working with the people that are bringing the bills to try to make them successful as they go forward, and also if some bills need to be taken back for more improvement. We often say that it takes three days to push a bad bill through the House, but it takes 3 years to push a good one. So it's because the good ones take the time and the scrutiny that's needed. And so working with our Rules Committee to try to give people a chance to bring their legislation to the floor, and those pieces of legislation that need a little more work done to them, we'll be finding and identifying those as well.
So, as people introduce bills just one by one, they're basically put on the regular calendar, basically in the order of chronologically which they got established. But that doesn't mean, certain bills might take a priority. That's why y'all set a special order calendar, right?
Correct. So as bills come through, we will start meeting as a committee and picking from that. I'll help establish a pick list of those bills that we've gone through and made sure that it's meeting the criteria that we want to do and doing the types of things the legislation is intended to do. And then we'll start picking as a committee to establish that calendar. And then I will present to the entire body that calendar as a resolution for the day, and then we hopefully would vote and adopt, and that'd be the bills we consider for that legislative day.
Well, we're here in the organizational session this week, and there were some rules changes put forward that y'all adopted, basically governing how y'all go about procedure, whether it's on the floor, the committee process, how votes are handled on legislation. I know there were some changes. Can you walk us through some of the basics on what is different going forward in this term versus last term?
Sure, absolutely. Just in any legislative body, there's rules that we go to. That's not only conduct but dress and all the basics of how legislation flows. And so every 4 years or so, those rules are looked at and say what could we do different, what could we do better. And our goal this time was how can we provide even more transparency to the people that we serve and to the other legislators, the media alike. How can we offer more efficiency for the legislative process to move through? And so we took things and worked with our legislative offices to find out what are some of those avenues that we could be more efficient and updated. We have some antiquated language in there with posting, and we had to update to the 2022 constitutional rules, and so aligning those was part of the whole process. Some big changes that will come with that are on the efficiency side. One, where if a bill goes through a committee in the House and there's multiple amendments added in that committee, then when that bill comes to the floor, you would have to vote on that bill, and then you'd have to reattach each of those amendments. And one change we've done is when that committee meets and those amendments are added, when it comes out of that committee, it'll come as a committee substitute, and all those amendments will be rolled into it. And so when it comes to the floor, you will have a complete bill that won't be broken up into those individual amendments added, and we will be able to highlight those amendments throughout that new committee substitute, and to show members where those amendments play a role. You may have an amendment in the past that's come in where it may add a comma or the word "and" 50 times in a bill, and you have to read through and see what that does and what that changes. Now that can be clearly highlighted, and you can say, I agree with that or I don't agree with that. So it comes to a floor vote of the people in the room, the entire 105. If you have a problem with one of those amendments, the process is still the same. You can still debate it. You just file an amendment to take it back off on the floor. So it just will create I'm excited about that change because it's going to make it easier for our members and easier for the public to see where those specific amendments attach.
Right. Well, and also, you kind of mentioned efficiency. Let's just say a bill comes out of committee with 8 committee amendments. Well, you've got to debate and vote on each of those committee amendments. And I'm pretty sure, saw some reporting that it's unlimited debate. So you could be debating, the rest of the day if time allowed. So I guess this could speed things along in terms of, all right, this is the complete work of the committee.
Sure.
And not, take hours on end to pass.
Well, absolutely. There's still the avenues to try to add amendments. There's avenues to be able to try to take amendments that were added in committee back off. All those procedures will still be there. So there was some scrutiny that we were taking away debate. All those debate procedures are still in there. But if we have a bill that there's going to be some small debate anyway, you just amplify it. And you're exactly right. We're trying to find efficiency of flow. Mm-hmm. When we come in with a bill that we feel is going to be voted on that day, it expedites us to be able to get to that vote a little bit quicker so we can vote it up or down, or make changes along the way. But it does help that efficiency with that debate.
Well, because I heard last term a lot of frustration from rank and file members that, if people got into a filibuster mentality, the days would drag on and on 5 or 6 hours on one bill, because everybody would turn their light on and be able to speak. So unless y'all clotured, which I know that the former speaker really wanted to be sparing with that, it could really drag on all day. And then upstairs in the Senate, they're breaking for lunch, and y'all are still on your first bill. So I recognize the frustration with that and wanting some efficiency. At the same time, the minority wants their ability to do that filibuster, to slow things down. So how do you balance that, the need for efficiency versus, letting the minority, making sure the minority has a voice?
Well, absolutely. Each rule change we looked at, we try to think of it. We have a supermajority as Republicans, and I looked at each one of these, and our leadership team did as well. What if we flip that coin? What if we're on the other side? Are we being treated fairly? And do the people still have their voice? We didn't want to take away any of that. So as you keep adding different procedural votes, like adding amendments back on a bill or adding amendments through that process or votes, sometimes you vacate the debate of substance for the bill and it becomes off-rated things. And that's not what the debate process is for. We're debating the context of a bill, a piece of legislation. What are the good and bad? Do we going to vote this yes or no? Is this best for Alabama? We get into, especially in the late nights, where we may get into personal debates, personal issues, and so hopefully that'll eliminate. We can push through the bills more quickly, more efficiently that we're going to pass anyway, and then get down to the real issues that we're going to debate, and make time for those specific issues with that debate based on substance versus any other issue.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting because we've seen this organizational session this week, but it was last week that we were watching Washington, and especially the House of Representatives. I mean, they don't call it organizational session, but it's basically the same thing. They were electing a speaker, they were adopting rules. It drug on for a week. They couldn't figure out, was Kevin McCarthy ever going to get the votes? He finally did. But a lot of that was over rules changes and individual members using their leverage to sort of exact those changes. Ended up passing a package, and we'll see how that plays out. But it strikes me because, you had basically a handful of, 20 to 40, really, folks that maybe have more of an incentive to, disrupt the process, get on TV, kind of toot their own horn, rather than work with the team to get things done. How do y'all avoid that same problem that they're seeing in Washington?
What I told people through this rules process is the same with other legislation I've been a part of. Make sure your disagreement is based on fact. Make sure your question or concerns based on fact. We had some concerns that blew up from this debate on rules just in Alabama, but was able to minimize it because we sent as much correct information out. As soon as we met and talked about the changes we want to make, the speaker and myself both reached out to the majority leader and minority leader, said, here's what we're thinking, just want to get your feels, here's where direction we're wanting to go. feedback, to circle back from all the members, Republican and Democrat, and we made the final rules based on that feedback. We made changes the day of just based on feedback of procedure to how efficiently work with local bills. The fact of what's happened in Washington, we're very fortunate we had a unified election of our speaker. It comes down to basic communication. People of Alabama are good people, good neighbors, and that we in the legislature are a cross-section of what Alabama is. We're elected by these people that are serving their community, they're working in their community and going to church in their community, and you're going to have those same people here. You're going to have that outlier in your neighborhood or in your church that likes to make noise sometime. We're going to have that same in the legislature. But clear communication, basic understanding, and we have a great group of people in the House that will agree to disagree and work through problems. And I'm very excited about the people that we have serving going into this next quadrennium. I think we're going to debate a lot of things. We're not going to always agree, but we've got a great opportunity with people that respect each other, and a good group that I feel that Speaker Ledbetter has put together in our chairmanships for our committees, that we are going to really get some things done and really move forward some legislation to keep Alabama going in a great direction we're going.
Well, good. Well, congratulations again on your chairmanship. Good luck. I guess we'll see you again in March.
Well, I appreciate it. Looking forward to it. Thank you, Todd.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts.
This week, I hosted a legislative issues breakfast where lawmakers, other state leaders, and those in the State House community gathered for a panel discussion about what we can expect in the next legislative session. Lieutenant Governor Will Ainsworth kicked off the event talking about his work leading the commission charged with proposing updates to the state's economic development incentive laws. That turned out to be an important topic to the panelists as well, which included Senate President Pro Tem Greg Reed, House Speaker Nathaniel Ledbetter, Senate Minority Leader Bobby Singleton, and House Minority Leader Anthony Daniels. Here are the highlights of what we discussed.
So I bring good news. When you look at Alabama right now, our economy, I'm extremely bullish on what's going on here. You talk to people moving to our state. Why are they coming to Alabama? They're tired of what's going on. They like our tax policy here. They like the opportunity. And from a business standpoint, you never have corporations in Alabama that come here and want to leave. And so we're doing a lot of things right. And so was honored to work with a lot of great people. I'm going to talk about who that is, to really look at our current incentives and find out, how do we compare to other states? What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? And so I was honored to do that. And our goal was simple. We wanted to have the best incentives for our state, and then also make sure we're getting a good return. And so this idea of corporate welfare is not accurate. When you look at the return we're getting, it's very impressive. And so the members we had, and the great thing about our commission is we had people from government, but also from the private sector. And I think when we're looking at that as a model going forward, having people that are experts in their field certainly, make a lot of sense for making decisions. One of the things I tell people all the time, and some of the new members, you'll figure this out, people expect you to be an expert in everything. I can tell you it's not possible. That's why you got to rely on experts in their field. So members we had on the commission, myself, Bill Poole, Greg Canfield, Vernon Barnett, Danny Garrett, Arthur Orr, Roger Smitherman, Anthony Daniels, Bobby Singleton, Kirk Fulford, John Barganier, Greg Barker, Rosemary Elbash, David Knight, Allison King, Luke Kisla, and Sam Addy. And so, and we were tasked from the legislature at reviewing and reauthorizing, making recommendations. And before I get started, I want to say this. The governor's office was great to work with. The pro tem's office, the speaker's office, both the minority caucuses were great to work with, and appreciate the input. And the thing that's encouraging to me about Alabama is we're not Washington, D.C. Everybody is on the same page about how we can move forward and work together.
I would be remiss if I didn't start with the new Speaker of the House, who had a big day yesterday. Congratulations again, Speaker Ledbetter. Can you talk about, I was listening in your speech on the floor right after taking the oath, and you talked about, yes, we've come a long way. Alabama's done a lot, and the things you're proud about. But you had this refrain saying, we can do more, we can do better. Talk about ways we can do better. In specific, what are you thinking, especially this next year and this next term, ways we can do better?
Well, let me say, first of all, thank you for putting this on, Todd. I think this is a great opportunity for us to talk to everybody and kind of see what we got coming on. And certainly, I would be remiss if I didn't thank my members and everybody here for allowing me to serve as your speaker. So look forward to doing that. Some of the things that I'm really looking forward to, I think we've started the process of improving education in our state. And I think that's so important with the numbers that we see, and I think that's a priority, and I know we can do better. And I think Leader Daniels and myself and some more members sat on a committee at the end of last session and was able to move some bills that I think changed education. There's no question, Chairman Collins, with the Literacy Act, that's changing education. I think there's a lot of things we can do to start changing education, and I think we see that process beginning. The Jobs Act, there's no question. I think Alabama is the economy is growing at a pace that I've never seen in my lifetime. But I think Lieutenant Governor put it very well. I mean, there's more we can do. There's things that we can do to bring better jobs, to give people better lives. So I think that's certainly one thing that we can do. The mental health issue that we've worked on for the past 3 years, I think we've made a difference. But we've got a long way to go. The issue of fentanyl has got to be one of the first things we address when we go back into session, because it's killing our children. And I think that's some of the things us as leaders, the state and the people in the state depend upon us to make sure that we do those type of bills.
Mm-hmm. Senator Reed, we heard Lieutenant Governor Ainsworth talk about his work with the commission on these economic development incentives. It's obviously going to be a big issue going into this session, a priority kind of across the board. Do you think, two questions, do you think it'll be addressed early in the session? And do you think it will be, swift, or do you think it'll be a prolonged process?
Well, first off, Todd, let me thank you, as the speaker did, for this opportunity. And for all of you who are here today, I've got many of my Senate members that are there. Thank you for giving me the privilege to serve as your president. And we've got a lot of exciting things in our future and have accomplished some significant things. When we think about the incentives, this is a task I've been on for a while, Todd, as you and I've talked about before. I sponsored the Jobs Act originally with then the Rules Chairman, who was named Mac McCutcheon. And of course, the Speaker went on to work with me on Growing Alabama and the AIM Act and then the renewal of the Jobs Act. So I've been engaged in this throughout this whole process now for 5 or 6 years. And I think, to the Lieutenant Governor's point and the analysis of the Commission, we have done an extraordinary job in the way Alabama changed its methodology of incentivizing businesses to come to our state. And we've enjoyed great success, as you heard the Governor give the detail of what the statistics are of how we've been successful. I think this topic is going to be one of the most important items that we're going to deal with in the legislative session coming up starting in March. I know it's a commitment of the Governor. I've talked with her directly about it. The Speaker, my minority colleagues, I know this is a priority for us. So I would imagine, to answer your question, we're going to be getting all of our ducks in a row as best we can, thanks to the Commission's work, the Governor's work, Lieutenant Governor's work, Secretary Canfield. So we're going to have our members ready with what may be several bills in a package that's associated with what we're going to do with the incentives. And I think they're going to be a highlight right off the bat. We're going to be focused on it. It's going to be a big priority for me as president that we get this done, get it done the right way, and so that it can be renewed. And here we go, continuing to have great success and being able to sell Alabama. As a sales guy, that's been my career, my whole business career. And if you've got a good package, you've got a good program, you've got good things to offer, then you're in a great place. And Alabama has been able to do that, being able to tell a good story about all that is available in Alabama. And we're open for business, and things are going to be exciting as we move forward.
Thank you. Senator Singleton, the last couple of commission meetings, I heard you bring up the issue of rural Alabama.
Yes.
and making sure that when we think about incentives, whether it's Alabama Jobs Act or the Growing Alabama Act, some of these sites, that we get off the interstates and also consider rural Alabama. Talk about the importance of that for you and your colleagues when these bills come up.
It's very important. I think that when you start looking at the state of Alabama and the growth and how it's growing, we have to make sure that we don't leave any sector out. You know, we just can't grow in urban areas, but we have to grow in rural areas to balance the state out. If you look at since 2015, I think we've only grown about 6,000 jobs in rural areas. We got to get the numbers up. That is good. I'm impressed with those numbers, but those numbers has to go up. We got to do better than what we're doing. And so there are some recommendations looking at how do we deal with rural incentives to get jobs to come to rural areas. There's a recommendation about moving it from the Department of Commerce over to the Innovation Corporation to be able to do that so that we can look at it and how to be able to better pinpoint, give more attention to rural jobs, smaller jobs that are coming in. We got to look at how do we be able to incentivize those people who are already in the footprint that are expanding their footprint. Example, I got a textile paper company that's investing over $180 million in the community, but in that footprint, they're only going to create about 30 jobs. And the only thing that the locals can offer is an abatement tax. And so we got to look at how do we continue to get those people to stay in the community and expand those footprints so that we can stay in, keep them to stay in our community. And that's what we got to make sure that we do. And I think that with this new act, with expansion on it, moving it, and making sure that we get more incentive for rural areas, we just got to pay more attention to it. Yeah. That's it.
Well, Leader Daniels, you represent Huntsville, but you grew up in rural Alabama, so you know both worlds a little bit, but you represent, you know, arguably the most innovative area of our state. We talked about the Innovation Commission and that moving forward. How important do you think it is to not just reauthorize these incentives packages, but to look at ways to apply some of those innovative ways so that it's not just the same, you know, incentives we're offering, but new and better, maybe more efficient, maybe more forward-looking from somebody in the, you know, most innovative part of the state?
Well, Todd, thank you first of all, thank you for having this, and thank you to all the government relations and members and associations that are here today to listen to this group of experts. I would say that, you know, we've had tremendous success since we've had about 217 projects come online. We've created about 38,500 jobs in the state of Alabama as a result of the Jobs Act and Growing Alabama. We've expanded the areas of areas that we're going to focus on rural Alabama as well. And so for me, I think that we've experienced a lot of success, and we've certainly seen a better return on investment, about 173% return on investment as a result of these incentives and investments. And so what we got to look at is other states around us see what we're doing and seeing the success that we have, and they're making the adjustments in order to be competitive, compete with us for these jobs. And so I think the importance of reauthorization is making certain that we're making larger investments. We've done about $22 billion in investments to date, but I think that we have to do even better and be a little bit more creative. I think we have to, as Senator Singham mentioned about the Innovation Corporation, Innovate Alabama, expanding our focus to technology. I think that oftentimes you look at areas like in North Alabama, the Huntsville area, and you see all the technology opportunities and technology jobs, but I don't think that we're exercising the same approach into rural Alabama. Rural Alabama have the same talent that we have in the Huntsville area. Since COVID, you've seen a tremendous amount of individuals from California, New York, and other places that have moved back home into a lot of our rural communities. And as we continue to make investments in broadband and expanding the digital, reducing the digital divide that exists, those areas will become more competitive as well. And so we have to make the appropriate adjustments in order to ensure that all aspects and all areas within the state of Alabama is as a focal point as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mr. Speaker, I'll ask this of you, but anybody I would invite to opine on this. We all were watching Washington last week. As just the chaos unfolded. And it was my observation that the House it had a rough week last week, but it's going to have a rough year this year, and really this Congress, because you've got a handful of members, maybe 20, maybe even up to 40, who basically have a greater incentive to be disruptive and go get on TV and whatnot, more of an incentive to do that than to be team players and to work with the body and everything. And juxtaposed to that is you gentlemen were both elected by, as tradition, bipartisan majorities to kind of show that bipartisanship. So how do you avoid in the House and even in the Senate that breakdown in incentives for folks going out on their own and being disruptive versus working as a team and getting things done?
Well, I think the main thing is communications. I think, one of the things we try to do with our caucus is bring them in and educate them on the issues. And that's been, since I was majority leader, now speaker, we've always done that, and it seems to have paid off. If you think about having a supermajority, which we do, we got to use it carefully too, because, the minority party represents as many people in their district as we do in ours. So I think everybody's got to have a voice. And I will say this, Leader Daniels and I, over the last 6 years, I guess now, not only do we work well together, we don't always agree on issues, but we find common ground most of the time. I think it's good to be able to agree to disagree. And you don't have to throw a temper tantrum to disagree with somebody. I think you need to be professional about it. If we can't come to common ground, then we'll have to go on. But I think both sides understand that. So, and I think I applaud Senator Reid and Bobby, because I think they do that as well as I've seen it done here in the state. But I think if we are really in this for the right reasons, to serve the people of this state, we don't have to do the grandstanding. We don't have to do the, as I said, pitching a fit. We got to work together, and we don't always have to agree, but we can agree to disagree and go on. I remember when I was first elected to the city council many years ago, the guy that was mayor told me one thing, and I think his elected officials, if we'll remember this, I think it'll serve us all well. But he told me, he said, if you'll always do what's right, everything else will take care of itself as far as elections are concerned. And I truly believe that. And most of the time in the House, and I really believe this, most of the people that serve with us are public servants. I don't see them as politicians. I see them as public servants. And I think that's the advantage that we have here in the state.
Senator Reid, we got a few minutes left.
Well, I would agree with what my colleague has said. I think it's very important. Relationships in being able to manage things in the state Senate, they didn't begin yesterday. Bobby Singleton and I have been working on being buddies as well as being colleagues for years. And it is intentional. It is not just because it looks good or somebody says it sounds good. We are intentional about the attitude that it's not about me, it's not about you, it's about the people of the state of Alabama. And we're going to have to move in a direction that allows us to accomplish significant goals if we're going to be able to be pleased with our time in the legislature and in the Senate. So trying to work together, I said yesterday on the floor in some comments that I made after the election, the fact that everyone's voice is able to be heard yields, in my experience, over time, a much better product for the people of Alabama. When you think, I've got it all figured out and my way and my thoughts are the best, and I don't need to hear from others in my own party or the other party, then you're in a place to where whatever you're yielding as your solution is going to be less than. But when you're willing to listen to what other people have to say, bring their thought and their experiences to the table, and then collectively look at what is the best outcome and the best benefit for the people of Alabama, it yields a better product. And Senator Singleton and I have been able to prove that that methodology will work. And I'm proud of it, and I think it's important that we continue it. And I see that and hear that from my colleagues in the House that have that same attitude. So I think moving forward, this is going to give us an opportunity to do very important things, because we're not so interested in who's going to be on television next. We're interested in what's going to be happening for the good of the people of our state.
Well, Senator Singleton was next on my list because, and for both of y'all, I mean, look, there's no secret. These are super majorities for Republicans, and yet you've got to not only represent your people, but get your constituents, get, you know, the benefits for them, the goodies in the budget, whatever they need. And so how do you do that? How do you use your leverage in the minority to come to agreements and things like that? How do you work like that?
Well, first of all, Todd, I wake up every day to win. And no matter what. But as Senator Reid said, we're genuinely friends. And I feel like I can go to him and talk to him about anything that's a part of that legislative process without having to hold back my feelings. And we can sit there and agree to disagree, and we can walk out of the room. And we try to walk out of the room with a plan to get a solution to whatever it is. And so I understand that, you know, at the end of the day, when I go in, I don't expect 100% of everything that I ask for. But if I can walk out of the room being in a super minority with 50%, that's a win. Mm-hmm. You know, and at the end of the day, it doesn't hurt him and with his colleagues. It's a win for us. And in the state of Alabama is better off. It's a win for us. And so we try to do what's best for the state of Alabama first. Not about party, not about D's and R, but what can we see down the road that's going to be best for the state. And if it's best for the state, that's what we want to do.
That's our show for tonight. Thanks for watching. We'll be back at the same time next week, right here on Alabama Public Television. For our Capitol Journal team, I'm Todd Stacy. We'll see you next time.